everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on visualizing your presentations with story maps. I'm Jasmine Sohal, the GIS analyst here in marketing, and with me today is Zara Matheson, the team lead of our Community Maps team. We both work out of Esri Canada's Toronto office, and for those of you that haven't attended any of our webinars before, we are going to be recording the session and we'll email you the recording along with the PDF of the slides after the webinar. So if you have any follow-up questions about this webinar, please feel free to contact Zara or myself. So now just some housekeeping for you guys. So if you have any questions about the content Zara and I are presenting today, please use the Q&A panel. Be sure to ask and then all panelists to type in your question in the box and then click send. So we'll also pause throughout the webinar to take any questions, and we'll take questions again at the end. But please feel free to type in your questions at any time during this presentation. So on today's webinar's agenda, today's session will focus on several specific topics related to visualizing your presentations with story maps. So first, we're going to look at what story maps are and how you can leverage them in your work. Secondly, we'll then see how you can create story maps compliant with accessibility laws. And finally, we'll go over some best practices for preparing your story maps. So here we go with our first section. Let's take a look at how we're going to be defining what story maps are and how you can leverage story maps as an alternative to conventional PowerPoint presentations. So what are story maps? So story maps are simple web apps that combine interactive maps, so those are the maps that are published in ArcGIS Online, multimedia content, so that could mean your photos, your videos, your audio, your text, and user experiences to tell stories about the world. Now, the world can mean anything as large as planet-wide, nationwide, or even as small as your local neighborhood or community. And now most story maps are hosted on the cloud by Esri, so you don't have to worry about the small details like maintaining servers, but you can also opt to host them yourself as well. So next thing is that story maps incorporate builder functions that enable you to build a sophisticated story with no GIS or web development skills. And this is the key. You don't need to know JavaScript or CSS to create a sophisticated story map. They also work well on PCs, tablets, and smartphones. So that means it's with the responsive technology behind story maps. So anything that you see on the big screen, you'll be able to see as well on a mobile device. And finally, story maps are open source, so you're free to download and customize them. You can get the source code on GitHub, and it's also accessible through the Story Maps website. And so you can also get started right away by choosing some of the many story map templates available in ArcGIS Online to suit the kind of story you want to tell. So story maps include an array of apps that provide ways of telling a story with maps. So there's a lot of different types of templates. Some of them I'll just go over quickly. So let's say you wanted to present several different types of points of interest. For that, a story map shortlist template would be best. If you wanted to enable your crowd to participate in a story, then the crowdsourced story map template would be best for that as well. If you wanted to compare several maps, then we definitely suggest a series story maps for that type of story. Next, so there's a variety of templates available for you to use. Although your story maps may vary, there are still 5 underlying elements of a story map that are consistent with every single type of template. So the first is a story. This is a concept or message that your map is wishing to convey. The next is a text. So this is serving as a narrator or a guide, helping the user interpret the map or any other multimedia content that's along the way with your story map. The third is your spatial data. So this is anything that's derived from sources including your satellite images, map services, tabular data, etc. Fourth, we have our cartography. So this provides an attractive, understandable representation of our spatial information. And finally, we have our user experience. This presents interactive functionalities in an intuitive way. So why should we use a story map over, let's say, another presentation medium like PowerPoint? Well, the first thing is there's no more switching back and forth between slides and demonstrations. So you no longer need the clumsy Alt-Tab on the keyboard when you are switching from, let's say, your PowerPoint to something on the web. Everything will be all contained in one presentation. Also, in case you are presenting, it could also cause some visually jarring and disruptive to your audience, so this can take away from your actual presentation as well. The second thing here is that it's also cloud-based, so everything will be easily stored on the cloud, so you don't have to worry about local drives or anything when you are when you're saving your story maps. Or saving your presentation, sorry. And finally, sharing your information with others is simple. So when you create a story map, automatically there will be sharing links available. So depending on which template you use, you'll be able to either share yours as a link for your audiences see the presentations themselves. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our demo. So this one, I'm going to give the reins to Zara, who will now go over how to transform an existing presentation into a story map.
Thanks, Jasmine. So as Jasmine mentioned, I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to bring an existing PowerPoint presentation into a story map application. As you can see, I've got a PowerPoint set up here. It's going to be about Story Maps 101. I've got some introductory slides defining story maps and how they work. I also have a slide referring to this web application showing examples of story maps. Now in a PowerPoint, I would have to browse to Chrome and go through the app in a browser. And again, I've also got a slide showing a website, the Story Maps website, which is a great resource. But again, if I'm presenting this in PowerPoint, I'd have to go into a different browser and then show you the website here. So by presenting the same material within a story map application, I'll be able to interact with the sites and apps directly within my presentation alongside my slides. We will begin by exporting our PowerPoint slides as images. To do this, I'm going to go to File, Export, change file type. I'm going to select the JPEG. This is a format to increase performance within my story map. It will load faster and requires less storage. So I'm going to click Save As, and it's going to save all of my slides as images onto my desktop. I'm going to press Save, and it's asking me which slides I want to export, and I'm going to select All Slides. So now I get a message saying that each slide of my presentation has been saved as a separate file. I'll press OK. The next step is to open our web browser and access ArcGIS Online. So I'll just sign in to ArcGIS Online. And now there are two workflows that we can use to create a story map. We can do it right here from within ArcGIS Online by going to My Content, browsing to Create, going to App, and then select Using a Template, where I see this thing saying Build a Story Map. So here it gives me all the different story map templates, and I can choose which one I want to use. The other option is to go directly to the Story Maps website. And this can be accessed by clicking this button here that says Apps and clicking on Story Maps. So this brings us to the Story Maps website. Before I go into creating my story map, let me show you some of the great resources available on this site. It's a great starting point to see what's new with story maps, and there's links to many other useful resources. You can see here there's some featured story maps on the front page. If we go to Apps, it will give you a bit of information about each of the different story map app types. You can go through, see tutorials. If we click on Gallery, it lists all the various story maps and it gives you samples created by Esri staff, partners, distributors, and users. This is a great place to start if you're unsure about how to use a specific template or you want to get ideas of what's already created based on a specific subject or industry or format. So you can see here you can browse by app type, you can browse by subject, and you can browse by industry. To go back up, we can click on Resources. And there's a lot of information here about learning how to create a story map. There's frequently asked questions, some more community and information, as well as some developer tools. Finally, if we click on Blog, you can find everything from new updates to best practices. The Story Maps team and Esri staff are always actively writing about story maps, and you can check here to see keep most up to date with what new things are being written. So now we're going to get back to creating our story map. We're back on the Story Maps website. If we click on My Stories, we'll see that the My Stories tab here is very similar to the My Content section in ArcGIS Online. However, it provides a detailed list of only your story maps, all in one convenient place. Here I can see all the story maps that I've already created, I can sort and filter them by type, date modified, and by app type. Another interesting thing is you can click on this button here that says check stories, and it will check your stories for issues. Things like broken links or missing images, and that is good that it showed me no issues found. It's a really great way to check all your story maps at once rather than having to go through each one manually. So if I click on a specific story map, it will actually give me some more additional information about that particular one. So here I can see that this Canada 150 map is a crowdsourced map. It tells me when it was created, how many views it has. Because it's a crowdsourced one, it tells me how many different people have contributed, what base map. It shows me what images and different maps are used in the app. It also gives me the option to edit my story directly here. If I go to a different one, this time it's Map Journal, it will tell me similar information, but because it's a different story map type, I get a little bit of customized information, such as the number of sections, the style that it's using, and again, you can see all the different maps that are included. It would also show up if you had any issues. It would show up here where it says no issues found. So to start creating our new story map, we can go back to the top of this page and click on Create Story. Now here it's prompting you to pick an app. It's listing all the different story map types, or you can go and ask the pros. And here it's going to run you through a set of questions. If you're unsure what type of story map you want to use, this is a great resource. You can pick different things, and it will suggest a story map to use. I already know which one I'm going to use, so I'm going to go back and pick an app. And for this one, I'm going to use Map Series. So a dialog box appears, prompting you to choose your layout. This one I'm going to do is bulleted, so I'll select that and press Start. It will then prompt you for a title, and I'm going to enter Story Maps 101 because that's what my PowerPoint presentation was called. And then I'll go Next. And here it's prompting you for the first content that will appear on your first bullet, which is similar to a slide in PowerPoint. So you can choose between a map, image, a video, or a website. Because we created images, I'm going to go to Image. And here it gives me the option to upload, choose from a Flickr or Google Plus account, or a link to the image. Because we saved our images from PowerPoint, I'm going to click on Upload and browse for an image. And here, if I see my Story Maps folder, I'll see the images of all my slides that we exported. I'm going to select Slide 1. I'm going to choose Fit as the position. That way nothing will get cropped, and then press Add. So you can see it's added in my slide to the first bullet. It's very similar to a PowerPoint presentation. So we also see this descriptive text panel here. You can add in more information, such as images or text, if you want it to appear over your slide. If you don't want any of the tabs in your map series to have this panel and you want it to look more like a PowerPoint, you can simply go to Settings, go to Layout Options, and then untick this description. And then you can press Apply, and it will disappear. If you just want it to be on some of your slides, you can just leave the ones you don't want empty, and you can customize it as you wish. So now none of my slides have a description panel. It's a good time to save my work, so I'm going to go and press Save. Now I'm going to go back and add in a couple of my other slides. So I'm going to use the same method, go to Image, Upload, browse for an image, and this time select Slide 2, and Fit, and then press Add. So now you can see I've got both of my slides as different bullets in this map series. So in my presentation, I also want to show the Story Maps website. So let's add that in next. We'll do the same thing and press Add. This time we're going to go to Web Page. And here it's asking me for the web page link. So I'm going to go to the Story Maps website and just copy the link and paste it in here, and then press Configure. And this time I'm going to select Fill. Because the story maps have a responsive design, embedded websites will auto-adjust depending on your screen resolution. And I'm also going to untick this box that says Unload when a reader navigates away. I want all my links to be loaded in advance so I don't have to wait for the page to load once I click on that bullet. So if I press Add, you'll see that the website is now embedded into my app, and I can interact with it just as I would in any browser. So I've also got that Story Maps app that I would like to add. So again, I can go to press Add and select Web Page. This time I'm going to select the story map, which is a group of different story map examples. So I can copy this link in the same way and paste it in here, and then press Configure, choose Fit, and then press Add. So now you can see I've got all of these story map examples embedded in my website, and I can browse through without changing what bullet I'm on. You can also see, though, that I've got some duplication going on here where it says story map twice, and then I see the Esri logo twice. You can get rid of that simply by going back to your app and typing in the ampersand and then the word embed at the end of the URL, and then copying that link instead. And if I go back to edit and then go back, I can change the web page link there and press configure and use these same options. And now you can see it looks a bit cleaner, and you've got it just having the information that's important. So now that I've defined tabs for all of my original slides in my Map Series app, I can optionally refine my app's appearance by using the options in the settings dialog, which is here. I can change things like the layout options, map options, the theme, or the header. So clicking header allows you to customize the logo that appears in your header. Using your own logo is important because it adds authority to your story and shows people who created it. You can be sure to specify a URL that will bring your readers to your organization to find out more information. So in this case, I'm going to replace the Esri logo with the Esri Canada logo by choosing My Logo and then going to Upload a Logo. If I go back to here, I can see the Esri Canada logo, and I can just add it in. And I'm also going to type in esri.ca where it's asking for a link. It also gives me the option to use a compact header, which is what we have set up. If you uncheck this, then you will have the option to add in a subtitle. So if I press apply, you'll see now that my logo has been changed to Esri Canada, and I also have the option to enter a subtitle. So once you're happy with the look of your map series, you're ready to share it. First, always press the Save button, and then you can browse to share. So here you're able to either keep your story private. If you have part of an organizational account, you can share it just within your organization, or you can share it publicly. It will also let you know if there are any issues, such as maps that aren't shared publicly that are going to be put in the public story map, and then you can change that if you want. So now my Stories Map series is fully operational, and if I go back to the My Stories on the Story Map website, it'll say, looks like you've created a new story. So I can press Refresh Stories, and I'll see now that Story Maps 101 is there, and I can find out all the information I want to about it. So it says that I've added 4 bullets. It shows me the images and the web pages that I've added in. So as you can see, in just a matter of minutes, we were able to take a simple PowerPoint and add it into a story map to make an effective presentation that can be accessed anywhere. Back to you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Zara. So Zara was effectively able to show us how we are able to take an existing PowerPoint presentation and put it into a story map. So the next thing we're going to work on, or go on to next, is story maps and accessibility. There we go. So the web is an increasingly important resource in many aspects of life, so in education, employment, government, commerce, healthcare, recreation, and more. It is essential that the web be accessible in order to provide equal access and equal opportunity to people with disabilities. So web accessibility encompasses all disabilities that affect access to the web, including visual, auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, and neurological disabilities. So internet sites must adhere to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.0. So in terms of Esri documentation, this is referred to as Section 508, which is in the most current Esri documentation as well. So what does this mean for web mapping applications? So Esri Story Maps team started working on Section 108 compliance for Story Map apps in 2015 and has focused on keyboard navigation, screen reader support, and color contrast. Specifically, the Story Map Tour, Story Map Journal, and Story Map Series template apps received accessibility enhancements, including optimizations for screen readers and keyboard navigation. So the Story Map shortlist was also enhanced. For example, in the compliance with the Section 508 accessibility standards. The tab key is a primary method for keyboard navigation in these apps. So the team also intends to do additional work in this area. There's also many other elements that are involved in making an application more accessible. Some of the examples here do include to ensure that the text is easy to read with high color contrast. You can also add alternative text descriptions for images and maps, allowing the site to be fully navigable without a mouse, so that's using the tab key, and also a clear and simple language. So with that, I'm going to go straight into another demo with Zara, who is going to show us how we can create a story map that adheres to the accessibility standards.
Thanks, Jasmine. So as Jasmine mentioned, the Story Map Tour, Story Map Journal, and Story Map Series apps have all received accessibility enhancements, including optimizations for screen readers and keyboard navigation. The Story Map Shortlist and Cascade have been recently enhanced for accessibility as well. In this demonstration, we're going to focus on the Story Map Journal application and some small things that you can do directly within the template to make it more accessible. The Story Map Journal template can be created through ArcGIS Online by browsing to My Content, and then going to Create, App, using a template, again, build a story map, and you would choose Story Map Journal. It can also be created in the same method we used before through the Story Maps website. So here I've already created the beginnings of a Story Map Journal application, and I have the builder open to make edits. The goal of this story map is to help readers plan and research which Parks Canada sites to visit this summer in celebration of Canada's 150th birthday. As we scroll through the different sections, I will highlight some things you can do to improve accessibility for all users. One of the accessibility enhancements that the Story Map Journal has received is that it supports keyboard navigation, meaning that you can navigate throughout the different sections and interact with links using just the keyboard, primarily the tab and enter keys. It's hard to see here, but I've stopped using my mouse. You can see the cursor will stay in the same place, and I can move through the different elements using just the tab key. Every time I move through an element, it will surround that element with a sort of a blue box so you can see where you are in the map. I keep pressing tab. I'm at a different section. I can press tab again, and here's a link. So if I press enter, it will open in a different tab. So back on my story map, I can press tab, and it will bring us to the next section. So as you can see, it's quite easy to navigate through the side panel with just the keyboard, but what if we want our users to be able to interact with the main stage content in the Story Map Journal as well? So in this story map, I want to include a web map that shows all of the different national parks and historic sites of Canada. To do this, I'm going to add a new section called Map of National Parks and Historic Sites to the main stage content. I'm going to do that by going to this plus sign and going to add a section. And here I'm going to call it just National Parks and Historic Sites. And I'm going to choose my map here. I'm going to go to Select a Map. And I'm going to search for Parks. And select that one. So I'll just leave the rest of the defaults there. I'm just going to leave this text blank for now, and we'll come back to that. So now you can see I've added in a web map. And you can actually interact with this map using just the keyboard as well. So this time it's using mostly the plus and minus keys. You can use the plus keys to zoom in, the minus key to zoom out. You can also use the arrow keys to pan around the map. So if you just have a single map that you want to show in an accessible format outside of a story map application, you can also consider using the Basic Viewer app. In June of 2016, Esri updated the Basic Viewer web application template to be fully compliant with web content accessibility guidelines. You can access this Basic Viewer application template through ArcGIS Online, just as you would a story map. So if I go to My Content and go to Create App, using a template again, instead of going to Story Maps, here I will select Basic Viewer and click on Create Web App. It's prompting me for a title. I'm just going to call it National Park Sites, and then press Done. So similar to in the story map, it's prompting me to select a web map. I'm going to add the same one I was just using, which is National Parks of Canada. Select. And now it's opened up sort of the configuration panel. One of the great things about the basic viewer template is that it actually has a section on accessibility options. Here it's telling you a bit about alternative map text, and it's telling us that the primary purpose of alternative map text is to be read by screen readers to allow the content and function of the map to be accessible to users with visual or certain cognitive disabilities. They also provide you for a link on how to use alternative text the best ways. This is a great resource. You can go through, it's giving you a lot of information on when to use it, what is the best text to include. So if you're using Basic Viewer, you can access that through there. For now, we're just going to enter some text here saying that this is an interactive map of Canada's historic sites and national parks. And then I'm going to go to press save. And launch. So like the Story Map Journal, the Basic Viewer is automatically set up with tabbed keyboard navigation, and you can zoom in and out using just the tab and enter keys. So if you're pressing tab, it's harder to see the blue box, but there is one around the plus sign now. If you press enter, it will zoom in. You can tab to the minus key, press enter and zoom out. You can tab to the search bar, press Toronto, press enter, and it will bring you to Toronto. If you keep pressing tab, you can access things like different base maps. And you can do all of this without using the mouse. So the Basic Viewer template is a great option if you're just looking to present a single web map in a highly accessible format. Going back to our story map now, another simple thing you can do to improve the accessibility of any story map is to ensure you provide detailed descriptions of what is being shown on the map or in the images, and also provide instructions on how to navigate through the app if it's unclear. In this section, the main stage panel is showing my interactive map of national parks and historic sites. So I want to make sure that I type in some text describing that. I'm going to type in for now just the same thing that I had used in the alternative text on the Basic Viewer, something like this is an interactive map showing all of Canada's historic sites and national parks, and then press save. So the goal is to be as descriptive as possible so that users will understand the function of your story map app and all of the elements can be understood. So in the next section of our story map, we're going to focus on a specific national park, at this time Fundy National Park. I want to add an image of that park along with some alternative text that would be tagged to the image and picked up by a screen reader. So this time I'm going to go to the pencil, and I'm going to go to where it says insert an image, video, or web page. I'm going to go to upload, browse for an image, and select this image of Fundy National Park. So you see here that it is filling out this image caption. It's important to note that this is not the same as alternative text tags. This will actually show up right below your image in the side panel, and you don't have to include it. So I'm going to press apply. You can see now that my image is here, and you also see the caption is below it. So one of the great things about the Story Map Journal application is that if I click on this source button, it will actually bring up the HTML code for the side panel. You don't even need to know much HTML to be able to use the alternative image tags. You can just search for this area here where it says img alt equals, and then there's two empty quotation marks. So anything you type between these quotation marks will be the alternative text tag for that image. So every time you add an image, this code will get automatically added in. So I'm just going to type in Fundy National Park here, and now this is the alternative image text tag for that image. If I press save, you can see that my caption is still the same, but this image now has that alternative text tag to it. So in the previous demonstration, we showed you how to import PowerPoint slides as images to your story. This is a great idea when using a story map for a presentation. However, including text as images can have some limitations when users are interacting with it. For example, here I've added a picture of some text because I thought it might fit better with the overall look and feel of my app. So this is just a picture, and the text is embedded within the picture. However, the text included in this image will not be picked up by screen readers, and depending on the colors and font size, it might be harder to read for some users. When including the text, you want to ensure that you're using highly contrasting colors, such as black text on a white background. It's much easier to read than this green on a dark green background. If you're hoping to make your story map accessible to as many users as possible, always ensure that the text is outside of an image. Another great way to enhance the accessibility of your story map is to use some free tools that can help you determine how accessible your website is. One easy-to-use free tool is the Accessibility Developer Tools extension for Google Chrome. You can access this extension by going to the Chrome Web Store, and you can just search for accessibility. And it's the first one that shows up. So don't let the term developer tools intimidate you. It's quite easy to use. There's a lot you can pick up with just a few clicks. I've already got it installed on my computer, so if I go back to my story map, you can access the tool once it's installed by going to this menu, going to More Tools, and then clicking on Developer Tools. And it will bring up this new panel. We can ignore everything except for this tab here that says Accessibility Properties. So if I click on this, I can then use this Select Element arrow to select any element on my web app. Here I'm going to select Banff National Park, which is the title, and you'll see that it comes up with some information. The first thing is color, and it's telling me the contrast ratio is 2.06, and the suggested is 4.5 or above. So you can see here that I should change the color to something darker, easier to read, and it's actually giving me some suggestions for a darker green. So you could copy these color codes and change your color if you wanted to. The other thing that comes up is this text box, and it's showing you what in that element is being picked up by a screen reader. And here, because it's the title, it's just picking up Banff National Park. If I use the same Select Element tool and click on that image of text, you'll see that I'm getting no accessibility information, which is not a good sign. However, if I go back to my image of Fundy National Park and select that element, you'll see that it's picking up Fundy National Park because we defined that as the image tag earlier. So these are just a few small things you can do quickly right within ArcGIS Online to improve accessibility without any advanced custom application development. If you have some coding skills and you want to customize your story maps further to make them even more accessible, the templates can be downloaded by going to the Story Maps website, going to Apps, picking the app that you want to use, and going to Learn More. And if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see this If You're a Developer section. So it's actually giving you, you can download the app, you can get it off of GitHub, or you can go and get more information on the Story Maps Developers Corner. It can certainly be a challenge to meet accessibility requirements with web mapping applications, but there's a lot of resources available online to help you, and Esri continues to update its templates so that the effort required by you, the user, to keep them accessible is kept to a minimum. Back to you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Zara. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen again here. So I have some questions here that came on, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer a couple of them now. The first question that was asked was if story maps are able to be used offline. So currently, story maps don't support offline usage. To use your story map, your end users need to be connected to the internet, or in case you use Portal, to your enterprise network. However, the story map journal template does have a print option that you can use to then create an offline PDF file. Another question that came in was, why can't I use my Facebook photos anymore? So just for technical reasons, it's no longer possible for you to use your Facebook photos in a story map. The support for having Facebook photos has now been removed from the Story Map apps as of September 2016, and you should be aware that Facebook photos added before September 2016 may no longer appear correctly in your story maps. So if you do have any story maps that use Facebook photos, I suggest that you go to the My Stories section that Zara showed you guys before and check your stories there. So there you will find any alerts if there are any broken links to your photos, including the ones from Facebook. Another question that came in was, is there a way for me to only show my story maps to my organization? Yes, you can definitely do that. The examples of the story maps that you can see in the gallery are the ones that are shared publicly, but you can also change how your story is shared, just like any of your other content that you have in ArcGIS Online. So when you do share your story map to just your organization, it's only for people who have accounts in your organization's ArcGIS Online subscription they'll be able to sign in and see your actual story. And this level of sharing is also a feature that you need to have with an ArcGIS Online subscription account, and it will not be available to anyone with a free public account. And finally, another question that we're just going to quickly answer is, and someone asked if they can recommend, or we can recommend any resources for web accessibility guidelines. I do have 3 that are very good. The first one is from the W3 organization, and this one is about the Web Accessibility Initiative. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste these links as well into our chat so you guys have the links available. Another one is from actually the Story Maps website itself. One of the frequently asked questions is how the Story Maps complies with the accessibility standards. So this question kind of gives you more information and links as well for more accessibility information, as well as Esri's legal documentation about Section 508 and Esri's commitment to accessibility. This will give you some more information as well for accessibility for your apps, or your Story Maps in this case. So now we're going to move on to our last section, which is our Story Maps best practices. Let's go on here. So one of the first best practices I always tell everyone when I'm presenting about Story Maps is you have to decide your purpose first. So deciding your purpose first will help you determine which template you'd want to use. So for example, a map journal is ideal for stories that need to be read as you use the story narration on the left to add necessary level of detail. So if you also want to present a live story, then the side panel might be too distracting. So in this case, a map series might be used instead. And the map series is what we are using today for today's webinar as well. The next thing is warming up your apps prior to the presentation. So as you could see when Zara was adding in her content, there was the option to unload when reader navigates away. So when you're adding content via URL, this can take a while to initialize, such as if you're adding in a web scene. So ensuring that you uncheck unloader when reader navigates away should be unchecked. So before your presentation, you can warm up all your maps and apps so they're ready to go. Unchecking ensures that things will need to be reloaded once you reach that point of the presentation. The next thing is to optimize your media. So in case of what Zara showed before of using a JPEG over a PNG for your slides, it's generally used as JPEGs have a smaller file size than a PNG. So you want to minimize the graphic size for your best performance in your story maps. And then as well as keeping your dimensions of your images the same size in terms of aspect and ratio will also help make sure that your story maps are optimally optimized as well. And finally, to test anonymously. So especially when you're creating a story map that's going to be publicly available, it's very important for you to test your story map by using the incognito modes of your browser settings. So in case what might happen is you might be making changes, but there might be some web caches which will prevent you from seeing any changes that you've made. So I highly recommend going to the incognito mode, as well as also checking the My Stories section of the Story Maps website will also catch these issues as well. The next thing is the embedding, as Zara showed you guys earlier as well, which is with the ampersand embed at the end of the web link. So what that's going to do is it's going to minimize the user interface that you see, as well as if you are going to be using a web scene, you use the ampersand UI equals min, and what that's going to do is it's going to get rid of any of the extra stuff around the web scene, so you just see the web scene itself. So in summary, what we've done here today is we were able to look at story maps and see how we can leverage them in our work. We were creating AODA compliant or any other accessibility laws compliant story map presentations, as well as we went over some best practices for preparing our story maps. As well as I have some resources here for you guys. So the first resource that I always like to show is the Story Maps resources page, which has links to basically anything and everything that deals with story maps. So it's a great resource for you guys. Another one is the blogs. So the Story Maps team is very active when it comes to blog writing with tips and tricks. So I highly recommend checking out their blogs for that as well. As well as on Twitter, you can follow at Esri Story Maps, which they like to promote a lot of local story maps as well. And you can also get cool ideas and inspiration from what they tweet about as well. Also, we invite you to attend our upcoming webinars. We have a couple of cool webinars coming up. So the first one is Designing the Perfect Map with ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud, which is coming up in a couple weeks, as well as the Enterprise Asset Management Part 2, which is creating the system of engagement with workflow enablement. Also, some related training courses for you guys include the Creating Story Maps with ArcGIS course, as well as the ArcGIS Online for Publishers course. And as well, of course, you can also get more information about Esri Canada through the social media. So you can connect with us through our Facebook or through our Twitter channels. And finally, we want to thank you for taking your time out of your day to participate in today's webinar. We're going to email you guys a recording of this webinar shortly as well, and the PDFs of the slides as well. So additionally, we'll post the webinar recording to our archive page when it is ready. We'd also like to hear your thoughts on this presentation, so if you could, please fill out the survey at the end when you exit this webinar. We're now going to stop the recording and take some questions at this time.